Sister Helen Prejean. As you'll see, I wrote a little thing on the back of it. You'll learn all kinds of interesting things, like we have someone who not only has written several books, but you know her from Dead Man Walking, and she has also been nominated for the Nobel Prize on 3 separate occasions. So it is our honor, our privilege, and I welcome you, Sister Helen.
Good morning. Good morning. Are we on?
Yeah.
It's a privilege to be able to stand before you and share the faith journey that I'm still on, as we all are. So basically, I guess the introduction is just to say, let me tell you what happened to me and what keeps on happening to me. We could all do that with each other this morning. But I'm going to begin by writing my spiritual memoir now. It's called River of Fire. The editors at Random House think of it as the prequel to Dead Man Walking. It's the spiritual journey that got me to death row. And believe me, as a Catholic nun who started out as a teacher and a director for religious ed in the parish, I never dreamed I'd be doing ministry on death row. When the media would ask me about it, I said, well, it's the upward mobility of the gospel. They didn't get it, but I know you get it. And so in my book, River of Fire, I have a prelude, and it goes like this. They killed a man with fire one night. They strapped him in a wooden chair and pumped electricity through his body until he was dead. His killing was a legal act because he had killed. No religious leaders protested the killing that night. But I was there. I saw it with my own eyes. And what I saw set my soul on fire, a fire that burns in me still. Now here is an account of how I came to be in the killing chamber that night and the spiritual currents that pulled me there. The spiritual currents which we are in deep connection with here in this community of believers is about Jesus and the path of Jesus and the call of Jesus, the radical call of Jesus to us, to engage in the works of bringing justice and mercy. My story is of a little girl who started out in Baton Rouge, Louisiana in a Catholic family and surrounded by privilege. I would never have used the word privilege. I didn't know it was privilege. But it was during the Jim Crow days in the Deep South. African American people couldn't even drink from the same water fountains as white people. And when I would go to Sacred Heart Church, African American people had to sit way over in a separate section of the church. And black kids couldn't receive their first Holy Communion with white kids. But you see, what culture does is, you know, all the adults saying to us, the kids, well, honey, that's just the way it is here, and it's better for the races to be separate because they like to be with their own kind, and it's just tension and you know, hardship and fights and all that break out. So stay separate, and that's what's good. Well, I just didn't know because I was disconnected what suffering it must mean for an African-American family to be traveling, but they couldn't stay at the motels. Or even if they had to go to the bathroom, if they didn't have a place that had color, separate from white. What fathers with their families or mothers, what it meant for their children to know that they were going to grow up and they would be prejudiced against and they would be dismissed and despised. I never dreamed. Because my daddy was a good Catholic daddy, part of the Knights of Columbus. He was a successful lawyer, he was a successful businessman, and he had resources, he knew judges, he knew bishops, he knew people, and I never would have dreamed that if anything bad could happen, or when Louis, my little brother, got really, really sick. Mama had been a nurse at Our Lady of the Lake, and Louis almost died, but she knew the doctors, she knew the people in the hospital, and they all gave their attention. They saved Louis' life. I call it grace because it was an awakening. So in my first years as a nun, I had heavy emphasis on prayer and meditation, mystical union with God. And I was, I was good. I wasn't one of those nuns that beat kids with a ruler and stuff. I mean, we're all friendly. I mean, nuns didn't beat us or anything. And they made learning so attractive. I mean, I came alive in high school. I learned to develop my gifts. I learned public speaking. I learned what education does. It teaches you, helps you draw out your gifts to know who you are. But there was rumbling in the land about justice, and some of the nuns, we were having fierce debates, and we needed to be more engaged in justice and with the poor. And I didn't go for it. I resisted it actively because I said, we're nuns, we're not social workers. What do you mean we're going to be getting involved in all these issues? We're going to get involved in politics, we have to deal with economics and all that kind of stuff. And I would have none of it. So when the waking up came, it was dramatic because I had resisted this connection, never understood the connection of the gospel of Jesus and justice for the poor and those who are marginated and those who are left out. And just to take it briefly, I woke up, I awakened. I was just in Temple Emmanuel in San Francisco, and we were in several of us were sharing, and I said, waking up, what's the Yiddish word for that? What's the Hebrew equivalent of that? And later Rabbi Singer said, right at the end,